It's quite rare in the modern car market that you're presented the keys to something like this 2021 BMW ALPINA XB7. There's a lot to discuss about the ALPINA brand and what the XB7 is trying to be, and I'm going to really get into depth with that later on in the video. But to get the basics out in front of you, the XB7 is based upon the BMW X7, and it's built along the same production line as the X5 and X7 in the North Carolina plant. We've had ALPINA models in the past here in Canada, but the XB7 is the first SUV. The engine has been modified. There's quite a few differences for the interior and the exterior, and the attitude of the ALPINA is quite different to what BMW is trying to address with their core products, their M Performance products, and their full-blown M models. So let's get driving and I'll share with you everything that I think you need to know about the ALPINA XB7. Okay, so basics when it comes to who ALPINA is. They're a tuning company that is fully aware of all of BMW's products long before they reach the market, so that they can come up with their engineering differences and all of the different elements that they'll be building into their products on BMW's production lines. This is, by classification, a BMW ALPINA XB7. In Europe, ALPINA is labeled as its own manufacturer, but they don't have that status in North America. Really, the core mission with ALPINA is to add on to luxury, comfort, and make the BMW products with the larger, more powerful engines feel a little more subtle, a little more sedate. And we are talking about some fairly significant mechanical changes for the XB7. It has the ubiquitous 4.4 litre twin turbocharged V8 that we've seen in countless M Performance models and M models. But with this one, it has larger turbochargers than the standard 4.4 litre engine. It has ALPINA specific intercoolers. There's additional transmission cooling, a full stainless steel exhaust system, and this leads to a substantial 612 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque. But the ALPINA, even though it can go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 4.2 seconds, it really isn't trying to be all about the numbers. It's trying to be a more relaxed and calming experience. And during my driving experience so far with this ALPINA, it really does have its own separation from, let's say, an X7 M50i for a few important reasons. Firstly, with that stainless steel exhaust system, it is an active system, and you can go from comfort and sport mode just like you would in a normal BMW, but even in the most aggressive, loudest form, the engine really isn't all that loud. There's no artificially pumped in audio, so the driving experience always feels more sedate. There is a nice little rumble I'll demonstrate for you, but it isn't overwhelming. And with that little bout of acceleration, I really did pull some figures that would be a little bit criminal on a road like this, but it wasn't snap your head back acceleration, it was a wave of torque. Over the X7 M50i, that is a 90 horsepower and 37 pound-feet of torque increase, which really is substantial, but it's also the tuning attitude of the ALPINA that feels quite different. You don't rev it out to reach redline, you just calmly gain maybe 2,000 RPMs. Another way ALPINA makes their distinction from a normal X7 is actually in the driving modes as well, because you have Comfort, Sport, Sport Plus like you would in a BMW, but there's a Comfort Plus mode that slackens the air suspension even further. And as you'll see, there's no Eco Pro mode. You can't even select automatic stop-start for this V8 engine. It's always on. And other elements about the driving involvement, you don't have paddle shifters in the ALPINA. You have little fingertip-sized buttons behind the steering wheel, and you kind of forget about them because there aren't these big silver wings behind the spokes of the steering wheel, and because they aren't really there, you don't ever really want to use them, and they are slightly awkward to use as well if you ever wanted to push the XB7, but I'm sure that's an intentional decision by Alpina to make a car that is maybe asking less of you or doesn't want as much involvement from you, so that you can have a more relaxed and removed driving experience. Talking more about some changes that are brought along to the XB7, you'll see that the face of this vehicle mostly has the face of an X-Line X7, not the M Sport package variant, with a different splitter with that Alpina text very boldly placed below. You have a different rear bumper with quad exhaust, something you won't find on any other X7. And then of course the classic 20-spoke Alpina rims. This is perhaps the giveaway that you're in something quite different from any other BMW. It really is Alpina's signature flair, and honestly these 23-inch rims are just ridiculous. Look how they're wrapped in this Pirelli P0 tire. This is something you would see on a sports sedan or sports car even, and they're here on a near 3-ton SUV. The XB7 actually weighs 5,850 pounds, so this tire and wheel combination honestly is quite ridiculous, but it wouldn't quite look like or quite feel like an Alpina if it didn't have those 23-inch rims. 21-inch rims are available and they'll come with a more appropriate tire, but you look at the tires, you look how thin the sidewall is, and you expect the ride to be compromised. And yes, there are elements of driving along in the XB7 where I've hit potholes or I've hit little cracks in the road, and that information is transmitted to the suspension that I don't think would be so impactful if we had smaller wheels and thicker tires. But the air suspension and the beautifully soft seats really iron out most of the kinks on the road. But I can almost guarantee that if you wanted more comfort, you'd go with a smaller wheel and thicker tire. Wrapping things up with other elements of driving here in the XB7, you have rear wheel steering as standard, so the rear wheels can turn 2.3 degrees to shorten the wheelbase effectively and make this feel like a much more maneuverable vehicle at slow speeds, but they'll turn in the same direction at the front wheels when you're going at higher speed to make the vehicle feel more stable. And you look behind you and it's like being in a bus. There's just so much stuff behind you, but the XB7, much like the X7, really hides its mass and hides its size. Even though it's a very wide and very long vehicle, I don't feel like it's hard to manage in a typical road like this. And the all-round visibility is more than good enough that driving along, it doesn't ever feel like I'm an inconvenience on the road. The steering is very light too, which adds on to that maneuverability of the XB7. Firing off a couple things, road isolation, amongst the best in the industry. Seat comfort is stunning, and the Bowers & Wilkins sound system, which is upgraded here in the XB7, is top notch. There's a few other small changes that I haven't mentioned with the XB7's interior. Most obvious thing is that you have blue and green stitching here on the steering wheel with what Alpina calls Lavellina leather. Merino leather is the standard leather choice here in the XB7. There's lots of small Alpina badging found throughout the vehicle. At night, you'll note that not all of BMW's orange glow is part of the Alpina. The engine stop-start and the X in the crystal gear shifter is a bright blue. There's some slightly different graphics and a different typeface in the digital instrument cluster. The blue and green combination is a signature touch for Alpina, so you'll see that stitching on the steering wheel or when you switch into sport mode. One of the greatest qualities to the XB7 is its ability to very comfortably carry 6 or 7 adults with really no hesitation. There's 5-zone climate control settings, and each seat is just as beautifully trimmed in leather as the next. I'm 6'4", and if I was the shortest person amongst my friend group and I had to sit in the 3rd row of seating here in the Alpina, I honestly wouldn't complain. The 3rd row of seating is actually fairly decent. The 2nd row with those pillows strapped onto the headrests are are as luxurious as business class. Here we have the entertainment package, so we've got the 2 screens with the same graphics that we would up here. Talking about the rear functionality of the XB7, you have that split tailgate just like the X7, so you can pull that bottom piece out and sit on it like you're about to take in a beautiful sunset. There's buttons to move around the second and third row of seating with just one touch. I love that there's a max passenger mode and a max cargo mode, and the seats are intelligent, so they'll move out of the way if they will block the seats raising or lowering. And if you lift up the false floor, you'll actually see that you could put a space saver spare wheel in that cavity, but I doubt anybody's going to put one of those in the back of the Alpina, so it's good enough to store more than a week's worth of shopping. The driver and the second row passengers have the ability to raise and lower the sunshades up above with the glass roof. You'll see that the third row has their own little specific section that they can ask to be covered or opened at their discretion. But I do wish there was some kind of button or function up here if you were the driver to drop the headrests for the second and third row, or the third row entirely like you would do in a Volvo. And this is something that I don't think you can find in any other vehicle on the market right now. The GLS Maybach, that's a 2+2 or 2+3 configuration. The Bentley Bentayga is more geared as a mid-size SUV, whilst you would classify the XB7 as a full-size. So if you have to regularly carry 4, 5, 6, 7 adults at any given time, look no further than the XB7. So where the Alpina lands in the market is a confident step up over an X7 or an X7 M50i. It has its own subtle flares that really make a vehicle like this feel special, but it really can slip away into the background if that's what you're looking for. But if you want a vehicle that is a full-size SUV to regularly carry a handful of people at any given moment, there might not be a better vehicle on the road right now than Alpina's XB7. If you like the foundation of what BMW has created with the X7, then Alpina's XB7 just takes things even further. So that's all I have to say in this video review. Thank you so much for taking the time to watching this video. Please don't forget to like. So that's all I have to say in this video review. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again on the channel soon.